Hello.
Hello iOS fans.
It's the Agents of Sigmar.
And in this video we're going to be looking at Great Western Trail, El Paso. So a little bit of a departure for us. We haven't done a non-GW, non-Underworlds board game for ages and ages and ages. But Asmodee Games very kindly sent us a copy of Great Western Trail El Paso, or we're just going to call it El Paso from now on. It is a cut-down version. I've never played Great Western Trail. I believe it's quite a big, involved and complicated board game. This is a cut-down version, play it in under 2 hours kind of deal. You don't need any knowledge of the original game to play, because Pete and I have played it and we don't have any knowledge of the original game. So
I barely had any knowledge of this game, and I managed to pretty much get the hang of it in the first game we played.
Absolutely, yeah. It is actually very quick. We're going to go over how to play, but it is, once you play it, it is actually very quick and easy to pick up. There's quite a few nuances which we'll kind of go over, but it is, I would say, it's a very accessible game. It's slated at 12 upwards, which I think is pretty reasonable. I played it with my 12-year-old and he could manage it. He got a little bit bored towards the end. The premise of the game is that you're in the El Paso area of the US and you are cattle ranchers and you're involved in the railroads and you're trying to set up, collect cattle and sell them and make money and collect victory points, which isn't really a premise, but that is what you're ultimately trying to do, collect victory points to win the game. It's quite an interesting mashup of mechanics. There's lots going on, all sort of interplay with each other. So you've got a bit of deck building, a bit of engine building. You get more stuff as you build the game up, and you try and cash in on what you've already built. And there's a bit of worker placement, because you have to decide where to put your cowboy or your meeple as you go round. And so, yeah, they all kind of interplay quite nicely, I think. I find it quite a pleasing puzzle when you're playing a game.
There's not too many tokens involved. No. You're not swimming in tokens all over the place, but there's enough. And there are no dice. No dice.
No, there are no dice. Shoot Pete down to the ground.
Love it.
There's a really nice mechanic, which we'll probably actually come to right at the end, that it opens up actions while also determining what score you get, which I really like, but we'll talk about that at the end, because it happens at the end of a phase. So as you can see, the box is magically opened. The rules, quite a nice slim 16 pages. And 2 of those pages are for the solo rule. So it is 1 to 4, 60 to 90 minutes. I think each time you add a player, it gets bigger by probably another player's worth, if that makes sense. So I think probably, I think if you play with 4, you would struggle to get it in 90 minutes. We took over 60 minutes when we played, but it was the first time we'd ever played it.
It was literally the first time I'd played it.
So I reckon with 2 of you knew what you were doing, you could definitely get it down to 60 minutes. It's published by Lookout Games. You can pick up a copy for around £30 to £35 in the UK, which I think is a pretty solid price point.
For everything you get in it and for the amount of replayability you've got in it, that's a fair investment.
There is a lot of, because we've played a few beginner games and there are extra ways of adding variants and for when you become experienced, which we haven't used, but it seems like it's got quite a lot of longevity and there's lots of different ways in which to achieve your victory point aims. The contents of the box are pretty solid. There's a slight variance in the quality. So you've got some quite nice boards that are good boards. But then you've got these are the player boards, and you use those quite a lot, and they're quite flimsy. It doesn't really matter, but it's an odd variance that these are thick. I like these little boxes. You get these little boxes to make, and then you put the tokens back in them.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I like that. The only thing is, I would like something for maybe the tiles and the cards, because they all end up all messed up in a.
And they're not all the same type of card. There are different ones.
They will need sorting out. I do like the cowboy meeples. They're good and chunky. There is only 1 per player, so you just move your token around each turn. But I do quite like those. One curious choice. I did read somewhere about why they chose it. I think it's meant to be more sustainable. But the board is made of fabric, which I don't dislike, but I would have been equally happy if it had been cardboard like this.
I don't know if it's the material that's caused it, but it does make the detail look a bit muddy.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it really matters, because you're just using it for the placement. It just doesn't feel very defined.
No.
I'm not after loads and loads of detail, but it kind of feels a bit more like a watercolor than anything.
Which I think is fine. But I know what you mean. These are a bit.
Especially
bleed into it.
Those are the things that I think are the more important bits, the actual symbols and the icons that matter rather than an actual background image. But it's not a massive problem, and it does take up less space.
It does. It could do with a bit of a press when it comes out of the box. That's the only thing I would say. Bit of an iron. So we're going to go over the objectives of the game and how a turn roughly plays out. But we're not going to go into all the deep minutiae, because there are quite a lot of subtleties, and we'll be here all day. So you start your game, and each player gets the same 10 cards that form their little deck. They're all cattle, and they have different colours, but it doesn't matter. That's not important. But there's 10 cards in there, and you draw a hand of 5. Right, shuffle them up and draw a hand of 5, and then that basically forms your deck. This is the deck building aspect. You buy new cattle as you go on, and you put them in your discard pile, and then they'll get shuffled in when you've emptied the deck. Because each time you use a cattle for whatever reason, you draw a new one. So ultimately you'll deplete. So you'll have 5. You'll gradually deplete the others that are in there. Then you shuffle. When you get to the bottom, you shuffle any new cows you've acquired, and the old ones back in, and then you draw back up.
But it's not just cows that you get in your deck.
No, you can get workers, although workers don't start in your deck, but they do go in your discard pile and then end up back in your deck. We'll come on to workers later. The workers are vital for doing, they've all got certain actions that they can do. So the game board, as you can see, has got a number of square spaces on. Some of them have letters on from A, which is El Paso, A, B, C, D, E, and there are corresponding tokens in the box that always go in those places. So F goes here,
E that goes there,
C goes over there somewhere, and G goes up here. I won't find the others. We don't need them all. And these have certain actions on them that you can do in the game, and you can move around the board. At the start of the game, you can move up to 3 squares, so you can move anywhere up to 3 squares, and you can stop on any building and do what it says. These squares, the whiter ones, are empty at the start, and you just jump over them. So you would normally go to B, and you could just jump straight to it. This one actually is B here, to give you a bit more of an illustration. You can just jump straight to B.
2, 3, like that.
Yeah, exactly like that. But if you went to here, you can do what's on it. You can sell white cattle, which you might have in your hand for 2, and you can buy new workers to spend money. I'm not going to go into the complexities of the icons, but that's what you can do on that card.
If you come to this one, so you might move 2 instead of 1, then on this one you basically just earn 2, and you get a little ribbon, which again we'll come on to how that all works later.
Once you've chosen a building and completed its actions, that's the end of that. You can't move again. You can't move 1 and then do the thing, and then move 2 and do the thing. There are some buildings later that enable you to have an extra turn, and you can move 1 or 2 more, but that's covered by the building squares. The common tiles on the board, these grey ones, they allow you to do kind of the basic actions that are the lifeblood of the game, and to do most of those tokens you need workers, and the first token is where you can buy a worker. So the workers allow you to do different things. So you hire cowboys. Cowboys will allow you to buy cattle from the cattle market. Builders, there's a building square. When you've got builders, you can use them to build new buildings.
Place them into these different locations.
Yeah, there's an engineer. There's a little train. I should have got the little train cards out, but I haven't. There's a little train here. There's an engineer, and if you have engineers, you can use them to basically. I'm not quite sure what it is. You're kind of using the train or developing the train system, and they will give you little in-game bonuses. So for the workers, you start off with one of each type of worker and a wildcard worker who can be any of the 3. They don't start on your deck. They start on the side, and if you hire a new worker, that doesn't go onto your discard pile like the cows do. That just goes straight to your worker pile, so you can use them straight away. Once you've used them, they do then go into your discard pile, and you shuffle them back into your deck. And then if you draw them later, they don't go in your hand; they immediately go out. So you can suddenly get workers back quite quickly. So what do they do? What do these workers do? Well, the cowboys, they allow you to buy cattle. The more cowboys and the more money you have, the better the cattle you can buy. The better quality the cow, the more victory points it's worth, and also they have a breeding value, and the breeding value is calculated at El Paso. When you've gone all around the board, you end up at El Paso. So the better cows you have, the better breeding value, the more victory points you're going to get. When you buy a cow for the ranch, it comes in 4 colours. They're different colours to the ones in your hand, and so they have different values for breeding and what have you.
And they're generally better, higher value cow cards than the ones you start off with, and you might want to start getting rid of some of those worse ones later on, so that you can increase the chances of getting the better cows.
Absolutely. When you get to the building square, which is square E, if you've got builders in your workers, or obviously you can use wild cards, then you can build a building. Buildings, again, they cost money, and you need to use building cards. Each player is only allowed to build 2 buildings on the map. You can upgrade buildings later And one thing I do like about this, I can't remember what the costs are of the building, but let's just say the first building needs like 1 builder and two coins, and then the next builder needs 2 builders and 4 coins. If you want to go from a 2 building to a 3 building, you can just upgrade it. You don't lose anything. You don't have to pay the whole cost. You only pay the difference in the cost between the building you've got. So each person can only build 2. So if you have a 4-player game, you could in theory fill them all over. But in a 2-player game, you don't at all. Some of the sites cost more to put buildings down. So there's some that don't cost anything and some cost extra gold. But again, in a 2-player game, that doesn't really happen because there are 4 that don't have any cost.
And when you have built a building, only you can use it for all its special things. If your opponent uses that one, they generally can do a smaller range of less good stuff.
Yeah, they're called auxiliary actions. We'll come on to those a little bit later on in the video. But yes, you can. That's quite an interesting thing. You can never mess somebody up by like stopping them from getting to somewhere.
Yeah.
Anybody can go anywhere, but only you on your buildings can do the specific actions that are on those cards. There are limited numbers of buildings. So in the simple game, the buildings are all one way up. But in the other game, and then when you go to a more advanced game, they're double-sided, so you can use more complicated buildings, and obviously that reduces the number of buildings. In a 2-player game, there's 2 of everything on the basic game, which means both of you can build either thing. In a 4-player game, there's much more competition for the buildings.
And the locations, really.
And the locations, yeah. Your engineers are used for using the train, which is this one down here. Now, the train is I think the hardest one to get a grip of when you're first playing. It doesn't obviously do stuff,
no.
But it enables you access to what they call objectives and bonus tiles. And the objectives are basically other ways of if you fulfill what's on the objective, you get more victory points at the end of the game. And the bonus tiles give you extra little actions that you might be able to use that are quite useful. So although they don't seem as useful as building and getting cattle, you need to keep an eye on the train and what's going on to try and get more of those objective tiles, or get a few of those objective tiles just to boost your score at the end of the game.
But it's not one of those things that if your opponent goes on the train and keeps using the train all the time, that doesn't stop you from using it as well. You'll get the same bonuses if you go on there as your opponent will. So it's not like it's a finite resource that you can use up.
While you can get extra objective tokens at the station, I didn't say this at the beginning, but you do all start with an objective. And again, in the beginner games, you're kind of like, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know what is good. But you can choose from like a pool of 3. But that might, as you get better at the game, which one you choose might determine how you play. Like some are like, get a bonus if you've got a 5-cost cow or something, and so then you've got to make sure you get your Cowboys, or it might be something for building a particular building, and then so therefore you've got to make sure you've got builders to do that.
They're quite nice because they help drive you. You can get lost in all the options sometimes with this game, I think, and having those really helps drive your focus and go, okay, I need to make sure I've got Cowboys, and I need to get money so that I can buy a big big cow, big fat cow, or I need to get builders in because I need to build a 2-stage building or whatever. So it does help focus your mind a little bit more on that one.
Absolutely. As you go around the board, you're doing all these things, doing their actions. You can sell your cattle, like I say, at the one at the building. You can sell your green cattle, and there's an opportunity to sell all of the kind of basic cattle all across the board. You never can sell the ones you buy at the cattle market, like the posh ones. You never sell those. But when you get all the way around, eventually you get to El Paso, which you must stop at El Paso. So even if you've got to move, even if you're here and you want to move 3, you can't. You must stop. You must stop at El Paso. When you get to El Paso, you get 5 gold, which is very handy. And you also have to pick up a Simmental orange cow. Now, they're not worth any victory points. They are worth 2 points over the breeding value, which I'm going to come on to in a second. But they actually drive the length of the game. So you get a different, depending on how many of you are playing, you get a different number of Simmental cards of the game. So as Pete just moved that off there, but it's in a 2-player game you have 9 of them, and in a 4-player game you have 19. And basically every time somebody goes to El Paso, they pick one up. When you get to the end, that triggers the end game sequence. It doesn't completely finish the game, and that comes on to another little subtlety of the game that I will talk about right at the end. But you basically can keep going after the person's picked up the last card.
It's not like, I've got the card, game over, count your scores. You get a little bit more time.
At the point in which the last Simmental cow is taken, then the game is hurrying to a conclusion. So the other and probably most important thing that you do when you get to El Paso is you calculate your breeding value. So as you've been going around, you've been swapping cards out, selling cows, picking up new cows. So you'll have a little hand of cows. You look at your hand and you look at all the unique cows. So you might have an orange one, a green one, a white one, and a black one. So let's say you've got 2 black ones. You can only use the value of 1 black one. And you look at the value of those cows, and that gives you the breeding value. Now there are other ways to boost the breeding value, which I'm not going to go into, but there are different ways you can do that. So it might not just be the value of the cows, it might be a few other things. And whatever your breeding value is, you'll take a counter that's on your player card and place it onto this track here. So it starts here at 0, goes all the way up to 20. And so obviously in your early turns, you're going to be down here in the low numbers, and as you get bigger, better, you'll get up to here. Now, there's like a number of fascinating things about this token track, and I really like it. One thing you're probably wondering is what the bloody hell is the player card? And Robin hasn't mentioned that at all in the game. Well, I'm going to come on to that in a second, but for now, you're going to put one of these tokens. They're numbered 0, 5, 7, 9, 10, and then it goes up in 2s. If you had, say, scored 11, you're not allowed to put it on the 12. You have to put it on the 10.
So there are different ways of boosting your score up, as Robin said. So you definitely want to look to that point of if you can use anything to nudge you further up this scale, you want to do so, because it's a lot better to get further up.
They give you little bonuses, and obviously if you can get all to the end, you get 14 victory points at the end of the game and 2 gold. So the higher you can get, the better at any time.
It's important to note you get the 2 gold when you put the token on there, but the points are used for calculating the score at the end.
Exactly. One curious thing, and I really like this, is that you can't use some of the tracks, some of the spaces more than once. Now, to clarify, each player can always use the spaces at least once.
So we could both have 1 counter on here,
yeah,
because there's just 1 circle, so we each get 1 on there.
Exactly, but you can both have 1 on 14. 12 has multiple counters, which means you can have multiple counters on 12. Now, curiously, if you have 1 on 14 and then the next turn you score 15, you're not allowed to put another counter on 14, and you must put it on 12. So that's something to watch out for, and a really interesting quirk, I think, of the game. 16 is a multiple 1, but 20 you can only score 20 once. So once you've done that, placed your counter, that's the end of your turn. On your next turn, you'll go back round again and go all the way back round till you get to El Paso, take a scimitar card, and then everybody keeps doing that until all the scimitars are gone. Now, I talked about the player board, didn't I? I haven't mentioned it yet. This has a number of things going on. So it's got 2 sides to it. These are your auxiliary actions. Now, if you remember, I said if you're standing on a building that you don't own, then you can only use auxiliary actions. And they are, you can collect money, you can, basically enables you to boost your breeding score at the end of the turn. You can swap cards, so you can, if you've got like too many of one type of cow in your hand, and you can swap out another cow, and then you can also trash cards.
So that takes them out of your deck, out of your hand, get rid of them completely, which you're probably going to want to do for more of those rubbish cows you started the game with. Yeah,
but you can't do all of that straight away, because you will actually start the game with little red tokens on a number of these places. And these are the counters that you will ultimately take off to put on here. And you pick, as one of the most important decisions of the game, each time you get to El Paso, you basically get to take one of these off, and they do different things. So this one, you can always do it. You can always get 1 gold, but if you take this one off, you can then actually use it to get an extra 2. So you can get 3 gold when you take your auxiliary action. This one, as I said, enables you to boost, give you something that boosts your breeding score. There's a tracker here that can go up to 4 to boost your breeding score at the end of the game. There's various ways to move that. The other side of the line, these things, you take them off and they're like permanent boost. So this one is really important. This one is +1 card in your hand. You draw 4 cards at the beginning of the game, and if you take this off, then you can have 5.
Which is quite a major boost, because normally with 4 cards, you're going to top out your score, not very high, but that extra card can really help boost your score further.
Can really be useful, yeah. So quite often it's really good to take this one off when you do the auxiliary action to get 3 gold, because gold at the beginning of the game is quite hard to obtain.
It's also worth noting that these have squares around them, because you can only use these ones if your score is up here. So you've got to score at least 10 or more to be able to remove any of these. And these also have usually an additional cost. It costs you 4 gold to be able to take this one off as well, whereas you get a gold for taking that one off.
Yeah. So there's quite a few little quirks in the game where it's plus money and minus money. Like it costs, you can, when you hire workers, it costs more money to hire wild worker because they're obviously better.
Yeah.
So you have to spend more money for them. But again, that's always given by a little symbol with a minus gold sign in it.
That does sound like there is a massive plethora of options, and there are a lot of options in this game, and part of the game is figuring out which way you want to go, which those objective tiles do help focus your mind on.
Yeah.
But that is the good thing about this game, is that there's more than one way to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of, it's easy to get sucked into like, well, my opponent's doing this, I need to do that too. But you don't. You can kind of, if you build more buildings, you get more victory points. Buildings have victory points on them. If you go for building cattle, you get victory points. If you do a combination of the two, you get victory points. And there's all sorts of different ways and different little mechanics to help you sort of achieve your goal. You might suddenly change your mind halfway through and do something different, and that seems to work. There doesn't seem to be a right or a wrong way.
I found it very much like a sort of Seven Wonders Architects and things like that. There's multiple routes you can go through to generate points or to generate ways to increase your point scores, and there's no one right way of doing it.
No, it's
There's lots of
never
options.
possible to do everything.
No.
So you kind of have to choose, well, what do I want to do this turn? It's governed a little bit by what cows you've got in your hands. Like if you want to do the building, but you've got the building one has the green cow, and if you've got no green cows and no money, you're not going to be building that turn because you can't sell any cows to earn it. You can, just a quick point, you can only ever sell one cow at a time.
Yeah.
So that means in your hand, what you buy, you need to balance cattle and workers, because if you end up too top heavy, then it completely restricts you. If you haven't got any, in one of my games, I didn't have any engineers because I didn't see the point in them, and then I found I just couldn't get any new objectives to score extra victory points. One thing I really like about, and I still don't know the answer to this, and it's kind of like the big thing that I really like about the game is I have no idea whether it's best to move fast or slow around the table.
You could literally just stop at every single station, and that's your turn. You stop at one, you hire some workers, you go to the next one, you get a bit of gold, you go to the next one, you sell a cow, you get a bit more gold, and you build a building, that kind of thing.
And when I first played with my son, and my son is very methodical, that's kind of what we both did.
Yeah.
But when I played you, I think because you wanted to go home, you zipped around the board really quite fast. I was like, well, you're not going to do the things. What are you doing? You're not going to be able to do the things. But of course, if you go around the board, you're picking up the Simmental cards, which they're not only victory points, but if you get ahead of, that means each time you're going around, you are putting tokens there. You're taking tokens off this board to give you more options. You're not scoring, probably not scoring loads, but you are scoring it each time. And then if you can time it right, because of the way I'm not going to go into full detail of it, but because of the way the end mechanic works, that you basically keep playing until somebody else gets round, you can lock somebody out of getting to El Paso the last time, which means they don't score. So they've been going around methodically, they've been building up their cattle, they've got a hand that's going to score 20 points in the beginning. But if you can
you just race past
and get there, they can't get to El Paso and they can't unlock.
And every time you go and score, you put, so even if it's lower down earlier on, you're getting other little benefits out. And when you get further up, it's obviously all about the scores.
Yeah.
But every time you do that, you're opening up these other abilities which also have other in-game benefits, which are all really useful. Whereas if you're really slow, you won't get rid of as many of those. You won't have as many in-game benefits to use.
No, so it's a real conundrum which I haven't solved, and I don't know the answer. Maybe there isn't an answer. Maybe it depends on who you're playing. I kind of feel like if you're playing your opponent, if you're both playing slow, that's probably fine. The game's probably going to take a long time, by definition. But if your opponent's playing fast, you probably need to speed up, because I think although they won't score highly, they'll be scoring much faster than you. And I think they will beat you.
Yeah, that's really is the trick, is working out how fast you want to go. The slower you go, the more stuff you'll be able to do, and the better shape you're going to be in when you get to El Paso. But if you take too long, your opponent's going to run rings around you.
Yeah.
And they might not score as much, but they're going to score more often.
Yeah. So that, in a nutshell, is El Paso. I really enjoy it. I love the different mechanics in the game. So I love the deck. There's a little deck building bit, but it's not too complicated. It's pretty simple. You've got your worker placement, like how far do you move? Which one of these squares do you go to? I think that's great. And then it's which ones do you buy? You've got your victory point mechanic down on the train where you pick up different things. There's lots of things to think about, but I don't ever feel overloaded. It feels like there's a little puzzle going on, but it never feels like I have to plan too far in advance to break me.
No, the biggest issue for me is having to keep going back to the rulebook to say, what does that symbol mean?
Yes.
There's a lot of different symbols. Most of them want once you know what they do, are pretty straightforward. If you see a little purple rosette, that means you can move your counter on one. If you see this picture of this person with like a silhouette of a person on it, that means you get a worker card, all that kind of thing. So it doesn't take too much effort after a little while. You've got one over here which you've got the little symbol which you can match up here, so that's nice that you can go, oh okay, I can do this, I can do one of these things, I can take some money, or I can get a rosette, and you get one of these exchange cards tokens, so you can then exchange one of the cards in your hand for one in your deck.
Yeah, exchange card tokens, I've kind of glossed over those. They're really useful because it enables you to manipulate the cows that you've got.
Yeah, if you're nearing El Paso and you've just got like a hand of purple cows, and you're like, I need to get rid of some of these so I can score better, they're really useful for that.
And you can do them as often as you like as well, and whenever you want in your turn. So they're quite versatile.
Yeah.
You make a really good point about the icons, but I do know that if you go on their website, you can get a full description of what they do. So there is a description in here, but sometimes it's not as exhaustive as it could be. The online, it's pretty good. And you do learn them reasonably quickly.
Yeah, most of them only take 1 or 2 looks back to then
because
work
you
out.
do use most of them several times on
You're
a turn.
doing most of them often.
Yeah, so you do learn them. But yes, I think the iconography is perhaps a little bit confusing. The only other thing I would say is that sometimes, especially I think when you both start playing a lot, it can feel a little bit like two of you playing a solo game.
Yeah.
With the exception of the do I run round after you to do it as fast as you, you're basically doing your thing and you're doing your thing.
Yep.
And what you're doing doesn't really affect what I'm doing.
Everyone's mostly just playing their own game.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot that you can do that your opponent's thinking, oh, crap, I can't do this thing now. Whereas a lot of other games will have something in there somewhere where you can kick out your opponent's chair from under them, and then they're like, oh, I need to rethink my strategy now.
Yeah, which I am a big father of 3 boys. I have mixed feelings about, because it is quite nice that, because none of them could do the other one over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do understand why games are built like that.
Yeah.
But sometimes you kind of think, well, I would actually like a little bit of, not like
a little bit of interaction.
Not like a proper, I've taken all your money because you've landed on my hotel.
Yeah,
type
exactly.
Experience.
No one wants Monopoly again.
But I just sometimes think it could end up being a little bit of 2 solo games going along one side of each other. That said, I really love the puzzle of it. So in some ways, enjoying the 2 of us doing the puzzle, obviously we're doing a different puzzle, but together, and there is interaction. You do tell each other what you're doing, and you do talk. So it's not like you're sitting there in silence. Yeah. I wasn't actually that excited by the theme. I thought it was more of an exploration theme. When I got the game, I didn't realise it was about cattle ranchers. The theme didn't excite me. I found that the experience of working out the puzzle and deciding the little decisions in the game were really fun. I really enjoyed making those decisions.
Yeah, I have to say, I've never been somebody who's seen a Wild West themed game and thought, I've got to get that, I love Wild West or anything, but it doesn't really matter too much. Once you get into the mechanics of the game, it all makes sense. You're buying your cows and all that kind of stuff, and
I quite like the cows. Cows all have different, all the breeds have different names, the different colours have different names, and I quite like that. There's some I've learnt some, so I assume they're real breeds. I have enjoyed playing El Paso, and we will definitely continue playing in it in our household.
I would say if you're a new player to board games, if you're dipping your foot into the board game waters, this might be a little tricky to start with, but give it time and you should pick up most of it. Don't try and think about the big picture too much at the beginning. Just concentrate on each of the individual things that you can do, and you'll slowly piece it together over a number of games.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, although they don't share a lot of mechanics, it feels a little bit like Ticket to Ride and a little bit like Seven Wonders, although they doesn't really share any mechanics. But those games are a little bit easier. This is like the next
step up, because you've got more of those mini games intertwine and impact each other a bit more.
Yeah, because you've got to get, although they're quite simple versions, you've got to get your head around quite a few different mechanical concepts to play the game, which is its strength, but perhaps a weakness for brand new players. I know when teaching it to the boys, I was very much like, well, this bit of the mechanic is like the deck building game that you play. This bit is like you're building an engine, which is what we do when we play Moon, or that kind of thing. It's like, okay, fair enough. So if you haven't got that frame of reference, it becomes harder to Explain.
Yes, and the element like the deck building element is very much like the Undaunted games, where you have a pool of cards and you're adding to that pool as you play, and you keep redrawing and redealing them.
My kids play a lot of Ascension, which is a fantasy deck building game, and they are very familiar with the concept of like trashing cards and why that's good and stuff, which you wouldn't necessarily be if you've never played one before.
We also didn't mention at the start, but the cards are tiny cards. We're not giants; they're little ones, which is also handy because then you're not having to try and deal with handfuls of cards at various points in the game.
So that's El Paso. Great Western Trail El Paso. No less. Try not to call it Old El Paso like I do all the time.
Really tempting.
They make Mexican cooking sauces.
Yeah, and they have very limited Venn diagram overlay with this.
The black beans, I've noticed, completely ruin the board. So that's it. Let us know what you think. Have you played El Paso? Do you enjoy it? Have you played Great Western Trail, the full thing? Have you compared the two? Do let us know in the comments below. If you're interested and you've got any questions about the game or the rules and you want to ask something in a bit more detail, do ask us in the comments below. Absolutely, and if you thought this was fabulous and you'd like to see us do more board game reviews, please comment on that too, because then I can report back to Asmodee and maybe they'll send us new stuff to review. So don't forget to click that like button. And click that subscribe button. And ring the bell so you're notified when we release new content in the future. So maybe we'll see you somewhere in the Wild West. Or maybe we'll see you in one of our usual GW settings. Until then, bye!